Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up and welcome in. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information. I am your host, Eric Romoff. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav. You can do your part in this endeavor. Scroll on over, hit those like and subscribe buttons. And if you watched our show last time out, you probably saw some green screens, much like the captain of our ship, MC Holland34 on Twitter, Mr. Mike Holland, like coming back at it real quick for this Wednesday slate. Starting to ramp up some action here in college basketball. It feels like these games are getting better and better. How are you feeling about what we're dealing with on a Wednesday?
Yeah, man, I'm ready. It's just another good slate today. After finishing third in the Big Jam yesterday, collected a cool 500 piece there, so that was really nice. Had some other good lineups. Saw you up there, giving a run at first there for a moment. But yeah, this slate here, it's 9 games. Tips at 6:30 Eastern, another 2K to first, right? So the matchups are nice. We're finding more and more that these slates go on, that there's not the Fordhams and the the VCUs and like the random teams that it's a little bit harder to find information on those injury wise. We just got like breaking injury news right now, like literally 5 seconds before we came on in the TCU game, which just makes it so much easier to build lineups. And we got a bunch of Power 6 teams on the slate, so excited to make it happen.
Yeah, that breaking injury news is key. Yesterday, we were gifted a bunch of injury news with Duke opened up a ton of value, let us get all over that Marquette game, which went into double O. So that was a big part of our showcase games for last night's slate. You mentioned off the top, we've got a 9-gamer for this evening slate, and we've got 3 games we want to showcase. We'll kick off with Michigan and North Carolina. This one's carrying the highest total on the board, 151 implied total according to KenPom. Should be a relatively close game. Right now, Carolina is laying 5 points. So we'll start with the underdog side of this one. That is the Michigan Wolverines, 24th in offensive efficiency, 91st in defensive, about middle of the road when it comes to tempo. Hunter Dickinson, 9.8K, always going to be up there from a price tag standpoint. So let's start off with Hunter. How are we thinking about him heading into this evening's slate?
Yeah, we usually love to play him, right? But this couldn't be a tougher matchup with Baycott on the other side. So, this game's featuring 151 point total according to KenPom. The pricing on all of these guys, it's gotten way up there, and it's going to be tough to really game stack this. Now you can, because we're going to talk about it. There's quite a bit of value plays on this slate, so we're going to be able to do it. Just playing the 2-2s and the 2-1s, it gets really expensive in this thing because the guys that you want access to, we know who's going to get the ball in this game and who's going to get the shots. It's so condensed on both of these teams. Like with Dickinson, you talked about 9,800. Hasn't been great the last couple of games, only a 25 and a 29, but we know he has 40-point upside. Before that, 2 previous games, 41 and 45. So, when you're almost pushing 10K for a 9-game slate, you're going to want to get at least 45 to feel comfortable in a tournament setting. So, with Dickinson, the rates are just there, right? He's shooting 30% of the shots here when he's on the floor. Just a great rebounding rate, 7% block rate. Shooting really well from 3-point line. So, and that's a place where North Carolina struggled. They're 217th in the country in opponent 3-point percentage. So, some added bonus points there for guys that can knock down threes, which would include like someone like Jet Howard. He's 7,800. That's just a tough price tag to swallow. He's only been over 30 once in the last 5 games. So, I don't know how much I'm going to have of these guys. Now, you got to play this environment because we just saw it yesterday, right? Now, we can't ever count on overtime, but anytime you get a game that gets into the 150s, right, like there's just fantasy points all over the place. So, for me, Jet, he's interesting. I'd almost rather spin down to Doug McDaniel, who is filling in for Jalen Llewellyn, who had the season-ending injury. and his rates have gone way up. I mean, since he started 2 games ago, he's put up 21 and 34 fantasy points. Usage rate in the 20s, shot rate in the 20s, assist rate in the 20s, 3% steal rate, and a 40% rate from the 40% from the 3-point line. So you have to like that, and you have to like the price tag at 5,200. Just feels a lot cheaper from Howard and even Buffkin, who's 8,700. And I didn't ever think we would get to a point where Kobe Buffkin was going to be $8,700 on the slate, especially when he comes in with some of the lower rates. He got lower rates on the floor than McDaniel does. So he's going to be someone that's probably unowned. So maybe he's a little bit interesting and maybe a one-off scenario. And then if you're looking to save some salary on the Michigan side, you can look at Joey Baker. Michigan is like North Carolina, though. They're just going to play their guys. Baker's going to come off the bench. We've seen him get into the teens. Most recently at a 14, 13 in there, but sandwiched with a bunch of single digits. So, only a 14% usage rate. He has to hit his threes, but this is a team that gives up some 3 balls that he's going up against, and he's shooting 43% from 3. So he's just not going to do much else. And we're not guaranteed the minutes with him. So, Michigan, a tough spot with the pricing increase on these guys. My priority is going to be Doug McDaniel because I think he's almost a lock for at least 20 fantasy points as a floor in this environment.
So that's exactly where I wanted to go. My guy, Dougie McBuckets. I mean, he looks like he's almost a lock in the build overall, right? The price tag is right. He's getting that additional usage. Is that the right path? Do you think that he's going to be a very popular option? And do you think that's chalk that we should plan on eating?
Yeah. And playing 20 lineups, I'm probably going to have 6 to 8. There's a lot of cheap plays that you can go to. But if you want access to this game, which a lot of us are going to want to do that, I mean, he's a guy that's there. But I'm not going to just completely ignore Howard. And I'll have a few Howards and even a few Dickinsons. I just don't think I can get to Buffkin. Can you? I don't know, man. The rates and just the production that we've seen from him, I'm kind of surprised his price tag's this high. Is he someone that you would consider rostering in this large field?
Yeah, I would, specifically in the big jam, right? Like this is a game environment that we want to get into, and I think most people are going to have a similar take, right? Looking at him pushing 8K feels like it's really out of place. So I don't think he's going to
pushing
be popular,
9K, isn't he? What is he in the 8,700?
I've got Kobe at 7,900.
Oh, 7,900. Okay, yeah, even that is still super expensive.
Right. Yeah, this is a guy that we thought we were going to be in the 6K range for most of the season. Obviously, that has to do with Llewellyn being out, but I mean, he's taking advantage of the additional run. He's getting up there. Broke 30 points in both of his last 2 games. If he's not going to be popular, I'll probably have a couple of one-off shots out there with Buffkin, under the assumption that this is a game that should push for the highest total on the slate. Should be close. Not going to be one of the popular options. So those are things that I look for when I'm trying to get leverage on the field. I want to move over to the Tar Heels side. Sitting at 8-4 on the season, but it does look like they're kind of finding their form a little bit here lately. 9th in offensive efficiency, 56th in defensive efficiency, battle of the middle of the road pace as well. We talked about Hunter Dickinson sitting at 9.8K on the other side of this game. Pretty popular pivot if you're not going to pay up to 9.8K would be to go to Baycott at 9.4. Is that kind of the line that you're taking with these pay up forwards?
Yeah, I think I like Baycott more in this situation. One, North Carolina's been feeding him. He just put up a 51 burger. Right. Usage rate's almost 30% now. I think his matchup from a fantasy perspective is a little bit better because Dickinson is not – he's not a great defensive player, even though his block rate's really high. I think he could have some issues with Baycott, whereas, Dickinson can sometimes step out and play on the perimeter and shoot some threes. Baycott's, where he's going to be, right? He's going to be right in the middle, banging around. He's tough to keep off the glass, so it's going to be a battle, and you get that $400, savings there. So definitely like that. Where Michigan really only gets one shot. They're 315th in offensive rebounding percentage. So even with Dickinson in there, right? You feel like Baycott's just going to kind of clean up the glass here. Should easily double here as long as he stays out of foul trouble. You also got Caleb Love. He's 8,900. RJ Davis, he's 8,600. They're the premier guards, right? that price tag that feels so expensive, but we've seen these guys get into the 40s. Most recently, they just got into the 40s the last game. But yeah, when it starts creeping up this high, it's a little bit tougher. Never want to play them together. Could see myself playing one of them, but it's going to be super expensive to play one with Baycott. And then you have Pete Nance, who's 6,900, who is really interesting because we've seen this guy get into the 30s and 40s, right? Typically, it's when Baycott will get into foul trouble or suffers, has an injury issue. But I mean, this type of game environment, right? Like him at 6,900, he gives you some good access to fantasy points. And he's a guy at Northwestern that put up 30s and 40s consistently. He's someone that, man, I'm looking at it. I mean, I'm probably going to prioritize Baycott and one of the guards, right? But if I'm playing one of the guards, I don't mind playing Nance with him as a correlated play on a 2-1. Look, guys, we got you muted, brother.
You mentioned when we were talking about Michigan, how there's plenty of options for salary relief elsewhere on the slate. Is North Carolina one of those places where you're looking to save a little bit of money, maybe a Leaky Black or kind of further down the rotation, or are you really just sticking to their primary starters?
Yeah, I mean, Leaky Black, like I did it last time. It feels like it feels like every now and then he'll have that random like 28-point game. So I might fire a bullet at it in one build, but he's not really someone I'm looking to get to. We know where where everything's coming from. It's the big four guys here. So yeah, maybe firing one shot at him here.
Yeah, I mean, look, you mentioned off the top, right? This is the game where we really know what we're getting in terms of their rotation. So no need to get overly cute and try to find different ways to get into it. Just follow the usage. The next game in our showcase, St. John's Red Storm, Villanova Wildcats, also carrying a pretty nice total, 148 projected, according to KenPom. Should be a close one, looking at Villanova as a 2-point favorite here. So we will start with the Red Storm, the underdog. This is the team that we love targeting, teams playing against them. They're playing a pretty solid brand of basketball, both offensively and defensively, but their tempo is insane, 10th in the country in tempo. So let's start with the Red Storm. Which guys are catching your eyes there? Mike, it looks like we might have lost you now too.
Hey, I'm back. So looking at the St. John side, man, this is the game that I'm most excited about. You look at it, this kind of reminds me of the game yesterday with with Marquette and Providence. Like the pricing is so much better in this game. And I don't know how popular it's going to be. Now, you got some expensive guys on the St. John side, right? Like Soriano, he's 8,600 and been doing nothing but putting up 40 burgers, right? And we just double, seems like night after night. Man, Villanova, like, what can you say about them? I mean, they just look, they're going to get better, right? Because Cam Whitmore's back, and we'll talk about him. But to pay 8,600, the matchup's good because Dixon is not a huge like center. He's not Baycott. He's not Dickinson. So I definitely like Soriano here. Curbelo, that price seems a little more expensive than what I would want to pay. Especially when you're in tournament setting, right? You want 5X at that price. That's almost a 40. I don't think he's done that this year. So I'm probably off on Curbelo. I'd rather spend down a little bit to play David Jones, who can get to a 50. He's at that forward position. He's 8K, 27% usage rate, 32% shot rate. And he can get it done on the defensive side. We've seen him rack up, 2-3 steals, a couple of blocks. Like, he could easily put 8 to 10 points up in just defensive metrics here. So he's someone that I'm looking to roster pretty heavily. Posh Alexander, 7,100. We got to figure out what we're going to do with this guy because I feel like he's great for tournament settings. But he's also the guy where you just look back and you're like, why did I play him? Because he just doesn't put up that many shots. He's got a 17% shot rate. Like, he gets most of his damage done with assists, steals when he is knocking down threes and is a little more involved in the offense when Curbelo and Jones aren't taking all the shots and when Soriano's not cleaning up putbacks. It's just a tougher path for him to get there. But in tournament settings in this environment, and the price discount, right? He's 7,100. So compared to their big four, he's the cheapest of them all, so we don't mind him playing that. Dylan Adai-Wusu, he's 4,200, and he's interesting. Like, I think Pinzone, a few weeks ago, we played him. We smashed him at like 2%. He's not really getting much run, but Adai-Wusu is. I mean, he's coming off a 31. He had an 18 and 19 before that, a 21 not too long before that. So at 4,200, he's a guy that certainly can give you anywhere from 4 to 7, 8x, really. And his usage rate it's 17%. I mean, but he's got a higher shot rate when he's on the floor than Posh Alexander does. And he's got better rebounding metrics. He's got about the same. He's got a better steal percentage on the year, steal rate. So he's someone that can give you some really nice access to a 2-2 in this environment. You do have to worry a little bit that the minutes aren't always guaranteed with Adai-Wusu. So that's a little scary. The 4 guys that are going to be on the floor are going to be Alexander, Jones, Curbelo, and Soriano, as long as they're not in foul trouble. So you just have to wonder, how that 5th player, Mathis, Adai-Wusu, Pinzone, right? Like, it's not guaranteed. So while he is someone that I'm heavily targeting as a salary saver, you just have to be careful with him. So I'm not going to go too crazy with him.
So we got our guy Corey checking in with some Posh love. This is a guy that we were absolutely smashing all last season. So to see him kind of in this, sort of shrug question mark territory feels a little weird, but I do think that Posh will find his legs sooner rather than later. I wanted to get your thoughts. You
kind of reminds me of Bynum last night.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Another guy that, everything feels like it should be there. But yeah, a good $2,500 more expensive than Bynum was last night. You mentioned wanting to potentially go 2-2 on this game, and I'm kind of concerned with the St. John's side, right? Like their utilization is something that makes it easy to identify who you want to target, but they're the ones getting paced down significantly, right? So is that kind of a case for maybe just a single piece on the St. John's side? Or are you still comfortable going 2+ pieces for the Red Storm?
No, I'm comfortable going 2, but I could see 1. I could see playing David Jones. And honestly, on this Villanova side, I could see playing up to 3. Like, I'm looking at 3 1s on their side. They are too cheap. But yeah, we've watched St. John's all year, right? They've been in other pace down spots, but they just make the other team play up and down. I mean, watching some of these St. John's games, it's like, I don't even know what is happening. Like, there are people all over the floor. Like, threes are just being, it just turns into like complete madness in half of their games.
Well, let's jump on in. You mentioned potentially going as deep as 3 wide for the Villanova Wildcats. This is the team getting paced up against St. John's, 10th in the country in tempo. And to add fuel to the fire, all these guys are too cheap, right? These are guys that should be pushing mid 8Ks, that should be pushing 8K plus, and they're all kind of in that mid tier. So let's pick apart the Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, right? They're 13th in offensive efficiency, and they're 349th in tempo. And now you're going to give them a team that is 10th in tempo. Now, St. John's is a good defensive team, but anytime you take a team this slow and you pace them up and give them 10 to 15 extra possessions at these price points, I mean, it's some fantasy goodness here. Caleb Daniels, now, we got to be careful with him. He's the most expensive guy on their roster here. He's 8,100. Hasn't really been over into the 30s with Cam Whitmore back, but still carries a high usage rate, good shot rate, good assist rate. So, he's someone that you can play. He's not going to be very popular because the guys below him should be popular. It's Eric Dixon. He's 7,200. Problem with Dixon is it feels like he gets into foul trouble a lot, but Soriano, I unless it's like on loose ball rebounds and stuff, Soriano's not really someone that's just going to like back him down like 3-4 straight possessions and put him in foul trouble. So Dixon's usage rate's 27%, his shot rate's 29%. And if he gets 32 minutes in this game environment, feels like he's in a really good spot. He's coming off a 38 burger too. So coming off a really nice game here. For a big man, he's a good passer. He's a 12% assist rate. Doesn't really block shots, but I mean, he can grab a steal or two, which is going to help his upside up at that 7,200. I'm in love with the 2 guys below him as well. Brandon Slater, he's 6,600. He's not going to be played. It feels like no one ever plays him, and it feels like he's someone that can get a 30. He hasn't really shown that. Not going to be popular at all. So he's more of a large field tournament play that I'll be rostering. I'm not going to go crazy. I'll probably have 3 or 4 shares of him out of 20 lineups. Just pretty consistent all the way through, right? I mean, double digit percentage points here, and your shot rate, your assist rate, combined rebounding rates over 20%. So he's someone I like, and probably the most popular play of the day is going to be Cam Whitmore. He's 6,500. I'm assuming that's because of the last game that they had where he put up 14. But before that, he had a 31 and a 34. And in this environment, he's probably going to go for 30 plus again. Reminds me of the Bryce Hopkins play last night where you just have to have 70% of him and maybe more, honestly. I mean, the usage rate is massive. It's 32%. His shot rate's massive. It's 34%. His combined rebounding rate's almost 30%. His steal rate's 4%. I mean, we talked about him all offseason. He is one of the top freshmen in the country, and he's going to change their fortunes. So even though they're 6-5 right now, I expect them to still challenge for the Big East title. When you got guys like, veterans like Daniels and Dixon, you slot this guy in. So he's someone that obviously we need a ton of exposure to. On the cheapies, right, you can play Archie Diacono, 4,200. Like, he can get you a 20-piece. It's ugly, though. 10% usage rate, 9% shot rate. He's just on the floor a lot. So, he's not quite a lock. I'd rather play a Daiwusu on the other side just because I know he does things and doesn't need, like, the ball to find him. Longino, he's 3,500 coming off of 15. A little bit better rates here, 17% usage rate, 18% shot rate. I would love this to go 3-1. I could even see myself going 3-2 in this environment. Now, anytime you play Villanova, though, it can get ugly. So this game can go one of two ways, right? It's going to go real fast pace and get up into the 150s, or it could go and die into the 130s. But if you're on the 130 side, you're on the Villanova side, and they come out victorious, I feel like still 3 of these guys could get there at their price points, and finding the one guy on the St. John side could be key.
So looking at this Villanova side, Whitmore is all but a lock, right? In terms of his other running mates within these Wildcats, who are the ones that kind of pair most naturally with Cam Whitmore?
Yeah, I would say Dixon. I would play Dixon with him, one for price and just one for the fact that his rates are really good, and he can a challenge for a double-double and give you some assist upside. I don't mind playing Whitmore with Slater. Whitmore with Daniels is not bad. I mean, Daniels' assist rate is 23%. St. John's is 251st in opponent assisted field goals. So could be sneaky. If he racks up 6 or 7 assists, Daniels is a big guard. He could grab 4 or 5 rebounds. And we've seen him score 20 points before. So, I mean, right there, at 8,100, he could climb up into the 30s, maybe get you a 40 in an overtime scenario. So don't mind him. It's just a little tough when you have Whitmore just soaking up so much usage recently and so many shots. If I'm going 3-1 and I had to pick 3, like gun to my head, I'm looking at Whitmore, Dixon, and I'm probably slotting in either Archie here or Longino, just depending on what the rest of my roster looks like.
Yeah, going to need that salary release. So coming through our first 2 showcase games, got between 4 and 6 of our roster spots already filled in. Let's go to our 3rd showcase game. That is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish heading to Florida State to face off against the Seminoles. Looking at a 145-point implied total, according to Ken Palm. Should be a close one. One point spread slightly favoring Florida State. We'll start with the Notre Dame side. This is technically the underdog. This is also the team getting paced up. Looking pretty solid offensively thus far on the season. And these price tags feel like they're pretty manageable. So what do you like about the Irish?
Yeah, you got to love and hate the Irish because they just play 6 guys. And you know what they're going to do. The problem is that literally the usage and shot rates and everything is absolutely spread out between these guys. Like Lejeski, Ryan, Goodwin, Wirtz, Starling. Between those guys, it's between 19 and 23% on usage rate. JJ Starling's interesting because of all those guys. He actually has the highest usage rate and the highest shot rate, but he doesn't do anything else. So unless he's making shots and taking over the game offensively, he just doesn't give you like the rebounding, the steals, he just kind of does his thing, trying to get buckets. And at 5,700, right, you would like to have him have some more outs. And you look at his game logs, right, like 22, 22, 18, 12, 28. Most of that comes from the scoring department. So for $100 more, you can get into Trey Wirtz. who's kind of fallen off a little bit, which kind of makes me like him a little bit more. 2 straight games at 15. We had him in the high 20s multiple times this season. Usage rate has kind of calmed down here. He still carries a nice assist rate, can grab you some steals. He plays a pile of minutes. So, Trey Wirtz, I'm not going to go bonkers on any of these Notre Dame guys, right? Like, I know the minutes have trended down recently in the last couple of games, in part because it looks like we've had a couple of blowouts, right? Like, that Marquette game, they were sitting guys towards the end. So, if you can get back in that 30 minutes plus, I do like him. Dane Goodwin is someone that can get it going and catch fire. He's someone that can get into the 30 fantasy point realm if he's knocking down his threes. But man, just doesn't do much. Like, all these guys, their rates are completely spread out. There's no one guy that just dominates the ball. This team, they're 309th in assisted field goals, which is why no one's assist rate's like over 12% for this team. It's a lot of one-on-one basketball. That's just what you get with these guys, right? Cormac Ryan, I just hate the price tag at 7,500, but I mean, he's a guy in the last 3 games. He's gone 31, 14, 43, and that's basically Cormac Ryan. It's just ugly. So picking like which one of the Notre Dame guys it's just going to be really tough. Lejeski, I like him because the price tag has come down, and he's the guy that can truly double here and still has a 10% assist rate. So at 7,500, and with Florida State just being just awful on the glass, I mean, they're 345th in opponent offensive rebounding percentage. So teams are getting multiple looks, which is another reason why I like, if Notre Dame can grab some extra possessions, those extra rebounds, those kick out rebounds on offensive rebounds for assists, like that could kind of give them a little bit of boost there. So, yeah, spin the wheel, pick yourself one Notre Dame player because they're going to score in the 70s. Florida State is not the Florida State of old on the defensive side.
So I think you sort of answered my question in that last blurb. I was going to ask if there is something about this matchup against Florida State specifically that maybe gives an edge to one player or another. Sounds like Lejeski gets that nod with the poor offensive rebounding rate that Florida State is offering up. So we'll move over to those Seminoles. You mentioned that they are not the lockdown defense of old. They actually come in at 155th in both offensive and defensive efficiency, playing at a pretty good clip, 67th in tempo. So with the Seminoles side, what's catching your eye?
What catches my eye is Matthew Cleveland is way too expensive, even though he just put up a 47. He's 8,300. I don't know, man. That just feels way too expensive, especially when the other 2 guards are 7,200 and 6,500. If you want to do it, okay, he's going to be 2% at that. I would hope people aren't rushing to play him. I would be shocked if he was double digits. If he's double digits, like, I'm going to be 20-30% on Darren Green and or Caleb Mills. Preferably Mills here because of the price, right? Like 6,500. We know this guy can score. He has a 30% assist rate, 3% block and 3% steal rate. So we know he chips it in on the defensive side. Came over a few years ago from that Houston defense. So we know he can get it done on both sides of the floor. Last 3 games, 25, 32, 25. So there's a really good floor there. He's having to do a lot with all the injuries and everything that are ravaging Florida State again this year. So he's someone that I'm very, very interested in, especially with that usage rate climbing towards the high 20s and the shot rate in the high 20s. So going to have a good chunk of Caleb Mills. Because it is a large field and the big jam, I'll be playing some Darren Green. It doesn't feel great, but guy can knock down a bunch of threes. Coming off a 42 spot. With Darren Green, you can also get a 19 or a 20 like he's shown in the past couple of games. He's really using this offense here. Quality shot rate. He just doesn't do much else. I'm not really going to get you a bunch of boards, not really going to get a bunch of assists. So the price tag has come up. I loved him when he was in the 6K range. It just felt his floor obviously felt a lot better. But the price is going to keep people off of him, and he is someone that can obviously do some damage. So, yeah, I think for me, those are the 3 main guys. I love that Jalen Worley's kind of gotten a haircut here. He's 3,800. He's a guy that just doesn't do a lot, but he's on the floor a lot. 3,800. I mean, he can get you a high teens or a 20. he just 11% shot rate. Like he's not gonna be getting buckets. You're gonna hope that he's dishing out his assist and collecting a couple of rebounds, maybe grabbing a steal or two, really to get up there. But I don't mind. He's a sub 4K play, right? He only needs to get to 15, 16, which he's done 3 times in the last 5 games. So if you're comfortable just grabbing that 4X, he's probably one of the he's gonna be on the floor 30 minutes, so he's one of the safest as far as a floor, but your ceiling, like you're just begging for him to take a few more shots. And if he takes shots, he's going to need to make them, obviously. You can play Cameron Corrin. He's 4,600. I don't know what they're doing with this guy. Like they want to play Naheem McLeod at that center position, but then Corrin gives them a better, kind of a better look offensively. Rates aren't great. But he's a pretty solid player. He's someone to look for in the future too. Not just this year, but next year. Someone that can make some noise. So, with this Ravage team, I mean, Cameron Fletcher is out. There's just guys that are these guys, we know who's going to play. Gainey's out. We know that there's these guys that are going to play significant minutes on this team, and against the Notre Dame defense, right? Like that's 221st in the country. 1 or 2 of these guys can probably get there.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Looking at this game kind of on the macro level, are you looking to sort of skinny stack it? Or are you looking to kind of get one-off pieces here and there? What's sort of the broader picture?
Yeah, I'm looking at 1-1, 2-1. I don't mind playing someone like Mills and Worley together, or getting a little bit cute with it and maybe seeing if Corrin can get in there and get something done with Mills. But most likely I'll be looking at a 1-1 situation because at least – with the pricing on Goodwin, Wirtz, and Starling, and then the price on Green, Mills, and Worley, like you figure 2 of those 6 guys in this game environment are going to at least get to 5X. So, for me, if I had to pick one on each side, I'm looking heavily at Caleb Mills, like we talked about, and Dane Goodwin. Like, if his upside for his price is significant enough for me in larger field tournaments, and then Lejeski if I have the coin to spin up.
Makes good sense to me. Let's round out the player pool. We've talked already about some of the more expensive players on the board in our 3 showcase games, but among the other top priced options, who are some of the guys that are catching your eye?
Yeah, well, another game on the board here, Virginia Tech taking on Boston College. Now, every time Virginia Tech's on the slate, we got to talk about the 2 bigs. It's Justin Mutz and Grant Basile. Yeah, I mean, the price tag, it's up there, right? I mean, Mutz is 8,100. Like, Basile is just under 75, 7,400. I mean, Mutz can he can put up a triple-double. So, that's that's always intriguing. He can also pick up 2 fouls in the first, 4 minutes. And then Grant here will just go bonkers, which, he was on that 3K winning lineup I had because Mutz did that exact thing. So, flip a coin on which one. They usually take turns. You can't play these guys together with the game environment, even though Boston College isn't that great. So for the top tier, I mean, you have to look at this Virginia Tech side on their bigs. When you slide over to the Arizona State, San Francisco side, this one's got a chance to be skeeky, and I don't think a lot of people are going to play it. Frankie Collins, he's now 8,800, got a big price jump. It was only a matter of time, though. Like, he had been putting up some decent games, but nothing earth-shattering. But look at his shooting. Like, he wasn't knocking down any shots. And when he started knocking down shots, right, like all of a sudden he goes bonkers and then is able to, put up a double-double, 12 points, 11 assists. He can rack up some steals. Obviously, that's against a San Diego team that loves to play really fast. So I don't think 44 we're going to see, but he's someone that can put up a 35 just with his usage rate in that offense. You can also slide down to Desmond Cambridge in that game. He's 7,600. Another high-priced option, probably not going to be too popular. He's just a bucket getter. We saw what Grant Sherfield did last night. He was part of that backcourt duo at Nevada that transferred out. So definitely like him. Probably maybe one share of him for me, but he's definitely in the player pool. Khalil Shabazz, he's 7,700. He's on the other side of this game. Man, I mean, he is, he's their leader. I mean, he's been there for a few years now, was part of their tournament run, and take a ton of shots, right? Super involved in the offense. tougher matchup, right? But 7,700, he's someone that in a one-off scenario that I'm looking at from the San Francisco side. And then you have to look at the two big dogs kind of up at the top, right? Like Drew Peterson, he's 9,200. Just every time he's on the slate, right? Like there's a chance that you can put up 40, especially in a quality pace-up environment against Colorado State. So you do have to look at Peterson. You love his floor. So if you're playing cash games and you can get to him at 9,200, you probably should. Isaiah Stevens on the other side of the game is in the top tier price point here. He's 8K. Coming back from that injury, starting to get fully healthy, right? Like we know he's going to have to do a bunch of damage, especially that they have a couple of guys that we're going to have to wait for some injury news to come out. We know that he's someone that can put up a 40 or a 50 if he's right. And if they're going to pull the upset, right, he's going to need to be that guy. So that's kind of the guys that are rounding out my player pool in the top tier.
Yeah, definitely some interesting options to pay up for if you're looking to move off of a Dickinson or move off of a Baycott. To me, it feels like the mid-tier is kind of where this slate is going to be won or lost, and there are a lot of guys in that kind of 6 to 7K range that seem pretty interesting. So where do you want to start there, Mike?
We got to start with Clemson, and we might need to play both of these guys, but definitely playing one. I'm probably going to do what I normally do, which is I don't know if I'm going to play them together, which probably a mistake in the first place. Because I said yesterday, I'm not going to play Kolick and Jones together, and Kolick and Jones went off. They do correlate because when Chase Hunter's a guard here, he's 6,600 with Clemson playing Georgia Tech. PJ Hall, he's 6,800. Both of these guys can drop 35 to 40 fantasy points, and Georgia Tech is not a very good team. So those two just absolutely stick out like a sore thumb for me. The TCU Utah game, probably going to be maybe 1A or 1B as probably the most exciting back and forth environment. And one of our top 20 players in the country, Mike Miles, is now healthy, and he's only 7,200, taking on Utah, who's been a surprise this year. Nobody saw this coming. But I'm going to have some Mike Miles shares because he's an 8 to 9K player when things are fully on. Can score in the 20s, can get you assists, some steals. On the other side, too, you get a little bit of a discount if you wanted to play one of the Utah guards. Raleigh Worcester just on the floor basically the entire game. Not the most exciting player, but when you're on the floor for that long and you do have some decent rates, you should be able to rack up some fantasy points. I just don't know that he has a massive ceiling. Marco Anthony, he's 6,700. Now, he's someone that does have that like 35, 40 fantasy point ceiling. TCU, they're in the Big 12, right? It's a tougher defensive matchup for them, which is why this game is projected. I think it's probably going to go under. So I'm really only looking at maybe slotting in one of these guys if I had to rotate, and probably rotating them every one or two lineups. It's not a huge priority, but these guys have upside, and that's what you want in tournaments. Sliding over to the Washington-Auburn game, Keon Brooks, he's 7,300. Him and Janai Broom, who we didn't talk about, who's in that top tier. I can't play Janai Broom at 8,800 because they don't play him 35 minutes, which they should, which we've talked about multiple times. But Keon Brooks, they do play him 35 minutes, and he's 7,300. Tougher matchup with Broom, but man, like he's going to need to be on the floor for 35 minutes, and should challenge for a double-double. So he's someone that I'm going to have some exposure to. Tyrell Roberts, if you don't want to play Shabazz, want to save $700. He's another guy that is going to get a ton of run. He's second fiddle essentially, but he could put up a 35. He's going to have to knock down shots. He's going to have to produce some assists. They're going to have to keep this game close. And we've seen Bobby Hurley in this team, which is one of our surprise teams that we wrote up this summer. They're really getting it done. You can also look at Kobe Johnson and Boogie Ellis from USC. If you don't want to play Drew Peterson, that expensive price tag. Boogie finally did it, man. He did it when I played him on the under on PrizePicks. He went off for 20 points in the first half. But hasn't been great. But he went off last game. Want to ride the roller coaster with him. He does have upside. And then Kobe Johnson, man, he's just been phenomenal. Man, at 7,400, he's really tough not to scroll past him is really tough. So. It's okay that guys like Miles and Worcester are just below him, but you just don't feel great with the way that he's been playing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I've been going through and checking off some of the names that we indicated as locks or some of our favorite plays. That leaves us just under $5K for average remaining salary per player. So we need to go out there and save some money. Who are some of your pay down options that we can do that with?
Yeah, we can go over to Boston College. The Langford brothers, they are too cheap for how many minutes they're going to get. Mekhi Ashton Langford coming back from injury last game, 4,600. Like Virginia Tech's tough defensively, so it's going to be tough for them to score points. But he's a guy with the high usage rate on their team. DeMar Langford is just on the floor for forever. He's 3,800. So maybe plucking one of these guys, see if one of them can get you into the 20s is certainly possible. They've done it this year. So they're the two that I'm kind of prioritizing in that game. If you're trying to get into that game and you think that one of those guys can make it happen and keep the game close. The Auburn-Washington game is one where there are a bunch of guards that I want to get my hands on. It starts with Alan Flanagan. He's 4,400. He's probably not the guy that I want the most of the other three, but for that price point, he can get you a 20 spot pretty easily. Kenyon Minifield and Corin Johnson from Washington. I play every time Washington's on the slate. I literally play Keon Brooks and one of the two on almost like every lineup. It's tougher to do it now because the Auburn is pretty tough defensively. So I may have to mix and match some of the exposure I have with these guys. But Minifield's coming off some super impressive performances. Corin Johnson was the number one basketball recruit out of the state of Washington. Getting a lot of run. He's very up and down. Both of these guys are very up and down. You have no idea whether they're going to score 25 or if they're going to lay a 7 out there. But getting exposure to these guys is pretty critical because when you look at Washington's roster, PJ Fuller, right? Not really a true facilitator. Jamal Bay seems like they don't really want to play him. So these are the two guys that with the ball in their hands can make things happen. For them to still be this cheap, there's a reason why. It's because their fantasy production, it just ebbs and flows. I mean, you're going to get ceiling games and you're going to get some terrible games. Trey Donaldson, once Bruce Pearl figures out that he should play Janai Broom 35 minutes, his next order should be playing Trey Donaldson probably 30 minutes a game. Got into foul trouble, was absolutely crushing last game. He's 3,300 playing Washington. The thing you worry about is Bruce Pearl. Wendell Green, that news is going to factor in, right? I believe he missed last game. He's questionable. I think he played 12 minutes last game and just couldn't get it going. So do we have an update on Wendell Green since last night?
Doesn't look like it, no.
Okay. Yeah.
What else is new in college basketball?
Yeah, 12 minutes. In that game. So in that loss against USC. So just have to pay attention to that. If he's out again, Trey Donaldson becomes someone that I really want to get exposure to. And then a couple of last guys here. Zane Meeks, he's 4,500 from San Francisco. Yeah, I mean, you could do worse. More of a last man in type scenario. Can get some things done. Isaiah Rivera, we need to pay attention to the injury news from Colorado State because that could open up some things. They got a couple of guys, Lake, that are questionable. I forget. There's another kid that's questionable for them. The backup guard that was starting for Stevens earlier this year. So I know he has a questionable tag on him as well. I think he's 6,800 or something. Jackson. That's right. Yeah, so we'll pay attention to that. If they both miss, Rivera is going to play 35 minutes at that price point, and we're probably going to want to get some decent exposure to him as well, especially in that game environment, which profiles to be one of the better ones, the top half of tempo there. So, I think for me, it's there's a lot of quality guard options as there normally are, right? It feels like the guard options for we saw it last night with Blake's, right? And Grandison, Blake's just went nuts while Grandison just kind of sunk the field at 40%. Two of these guys, it feels like are going to go for a 25 spot. So we'll just have to, see if we can't work in the right lineups.
Man, that Blake's call was make or break for our deep run last night. Any closing thoughts on kind of the overall strategy or anything you want to leave the people with before we break?
Yeah, mid-tier is really strong, very, very strong. You can get some of the lower high tier players to go along with a bunch of mid tier players and a couple of value plays. That's one way to go. Or you can look at it from perspective, like get into this environment of Michigan, North Carolina, pay up, and then spin down on gets a couple of those value plays. You can make that work. So those will be the kind of the two strategies. I'll probably go 50-50 on them and just kind of rotate my player pools through it.
Yeah, it feels like at first blush it's kind of tough to get into some of those pay up options with Michigan and with North Carolina, right? So attacking the mid tier, getting some of that value in, keeping an eye on some of the late breaking news, see if that opens up some value, might be the way to do it. If you are looking to step up your college basketball game, best way to do it is to get over to drroto.com. That is where you can find all of Mike's written work on these college basketball streets. Not only does that get you access to all of his written work, but that also gets you access to our members-only Discord. We are in there every single night talking about PrizePicks, talking about lineups, sharing late-breaking news, really going through everything that we need to do in order to build a winning lineup, in order to get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.